Guys, let's all give a big round of applause to Arman Tsarukyan for finally fighting again. Woo! Go Arman! Congratulations! You didn't just wait for 2 years to get your title shot that you didn't really deserve. You only waited 19 months just to get back in there with Dan Hooker. This is incredible. Congratulations, Arman. Good for you. And look, don't get me wrong, Dan Hooker's been out for a while as well. 14 months since August of last year, but it's not really the same with him, right? He hasn't just been sitting on his hands waiting for a title shot while the rest of the division's trying to earn their spot. He wanted to have his fight with Justin Gaethje. It was booked. There was an injury. He's out. You know, that could play into this fight, and I know that Arman's the heavy favorite, but this is going to be closer than you think. Seriously. I'm going to break down the whole main card. Let's start with the main event. We're already into it. Arman Tsarukyan's not as good as you think, or at least he hasn't been tested to show that he's really that good. I know he has a fight against old school Islam, but as we've all seen, Islam Makhachev has grown significantly since then. The Charles Oliveira fight, especially with it being a 3-round fight, I don't know if that says enough. I don't know if it says enough about Arman's gas tank. You know, it was arguable who won that fight. It depends how much you weigh submissions. Dan Hooker in his last fight looked great against Mateusz Gamrot, and I know that Mateusz Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan aren't really the same type of wrestler. Like, Arman Tsarukyan has more throws at his disposal. He's not just going to like sort of shoot for the single and try and catch kicks and go for it, which Dan Hooker was able to really stuff with a lot of his guillotines. But I think that a big thing that causes Dan Hooker to seem worse than he is the Islam fight where he got finished in like a minute. And I know I just said Islam's grown a lot since then, and so, you know, Arman obviously has too, and so if Islam was able to do that to Dan Hooker like 4 years ago, then what's stopping Arman from being able to do that to Dan Hooker now? But if you go watch the Dan Hooker fight with Mateusz Gamrot, his wrestling has improved a lot. He's fighting guillotines. He's able to get his back up against the fence and get out of positions a lot better than he used to. He also has a different style with these wrestlers where he puts them on the back foot rather than just sort of waiting to counter strike like he might against someone that's more of an aggressive striker. He has constant forward movement, trying to push lots of aggression, and I don't think that this is just like Dan Hooker has a puncher's chance here. The thing to learn from the fight that he had with Mateusz Gamrot is that if you're scoring these rounds based on damage, Dan Hooker has the ability in a 30-second moment to do enough damage to win a round if the wrestling style opponent doesn't do enough in the other 3 to 4 minutes that they're trying to get their takedown or eventually get their takedown but don't really do anything of it, or while they're going for their takedown, Dan Hooker's savagely throwing elbows into the side of your ears and clearly doing damaging strikes, right? Like, all it takes is for Dan Hooker to throw a beautiful left hand that catches you, that stumbles you a bit, exactly like he did to Mateusz Gamrot. Follow it up with like a knee as you're coming into the body, you know, make it just look like there's lots of pressure and that you're having to get away from him. And then again, like, you go shoot for that takedown and he's throwing. As soon as you get him down, he's trying to get back up. Now, if Dan Hooker is able to stick to that type of game plan for the whole fight, I don't think it's about Dan Hooker having a puncher's chance. I think it's about Arman Tsarukyan being able to get a submission out of somewhere, you know? So I'm not saying that I think that Dan Hooker should be the favorite by any means, but I think that this is not Arman Tsarukyan should not be a 3-1 favorite or a 4-1 favorite or whatever he is. And I think Dan Hooker being like a 5-1 dog or something, it's insane. Like, Dan Hooker can actually finish this with strikes. And again, he can win 3 rounds easily, 4 rounds easily, if he does enough damage. Not to mention that pressure that he was using against Mateusz Gamrot wore Gamrot down. It looked like if that fight were to go another 2 rounds, Dan Hooker would have broken Mateusz Gamrot eventually. Arman Tsarukyan has not fought in 19 months. And his last fight, again, if you go back and look at it, yeah, okay, he won. I probably say he won. like, if submissions don't really mean anything unless you get them, yeah, you won. Great. Dan Hooker, Mateusz Gamrot, at the time when I watched that fight, I thought maybe it was a robbery. Going back and watching it, it is so clear that Dan Hooker won that fight. Like, and by actually fighting and damaging his opponent. So this is one of those ones where I think it's closer than we think, and I'm hoping that Dan Hooker wins. Okay, honestly, with the odds, I might put some money on it, but like, if this was a coin flip, I would not be betting on Dan Hooker. If this was even like, 2-1 or whatever, I wouldn't probably bet on Dan Hooker, but I hope he wins. It's closer than you think, and I'm making my prediction. I'm going for Dan Hooker. I'm going to go for Dan Hooker by decision. I know that sounds crazy, but seriously, all it takes is for him to land significant damage in 3 of the 5 rounds. Do you think that Dan Hooker can land significant damage on Arman Tsarukyan in 3 of 5 rounds? If you go back and watch the Mateusz Gamrot fight and you look at the style and the way that Dan Hooker is advancing and the urgency that he has from minute 1, if you compare that to the Michael Chandler fight that he had, because again, this is the other reason why a lot of people like look at Dan Hooker as so bad, because he got finished by Michael Chandler. Like, that was a learning lesson. He stayed on the back foot, circled around. He thought he was just going to be able to like counter and catch Mike and put him down. He's got to fight. He's got to go in there like he's his own 1-minute scraps and get it done, right? Like, I think he's actually also learning a bit from like hosting those fights, seeing how much damage can be done in a minute. And it's like, let's go out there and finish this guy. I have cardio to go for days. Let's just go Nick Diaz, full pressure, Carlos Condit style, but with real power. Like, Dan Hooker has underrated power. To quote Dominic Cruz, he goes, "There's no easy rounds with Dan Hooker." I love that. The guillotine defense was perfect. It seems like he's learned to, like, with these wrestlers, have no fear of the power that's coming back at you. And if you do that, and it's probably true, like, I don't see Arman Tsarukyan just easily knocking Dan Hooker out. Okay, like the recent finish that comes up is against Beneil Dariush, and like, we just saw Beneil Dariush get flatlined in 16 seconds. It may just be that Dariush's chin has gone at this point, right? I don't see him just knocking Dan Hooker out. Yeah, the guillotine defense is really good. If the wrestling has no damage, and again, Dan Hooker has no fear of the strikes that are coming back at him, and he just hits you really bad a few times, you can win rounds like that. Arman did almost get caught in the guillotine by Charles, which Dan Hooker was using that guillotine a lot in his fight against Mateusz Gamrot. I don't see Dan Hooker being able to guillotine Arman Tsarukyan if Charles Oliveira wasn't, and Charles had it locked in tight. Like, tight. It was crazy. Arman Tsarukyan had to give up mount to let Charles Oliveira to try and get out of it. He had to let Charles like basically take mount so he could slip out of it. But I was wondering about the ring rust. At the end of the day, they've both spent roughly the same amount of time out, and that's actually with Dan Hooker having an injury as well. It's going to be closer than you think, guys, but Dan Hooker by decision, that's the way I'm going. So moving on to Belal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Garry. Guys, I'm going with Ian Garry here. I'm going to make another video, I think, called How Bad is Belal Muhammad? Because after this fight last weekend, JDM versus Islam, like, it makes you go, okay, is Belal's just takedown offense not really that good? Like, he used it against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to impose his will, but Wonderboy's had really suspect takedown defense for a while. Like, I guess it just doesn't take that much of a higher level to be able to manage it. Ian Garry definitely has higher level takedown defense than Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does, as we know from his fight with Shavkat. Like, speaking of which, if Shavkat had not been injured and fought Belal Muhammad for the belt, I think it's pretty clear after last weekend that Shavkat would have been the champion, and we would have been seeing Islam Makhachev versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, which would have been a much more interesting fight. So I I'm just wondering if maybe Belal Muhammad is super overhyped or overrated because of his fight with Leon Edwards looking so dominant, but Leon Edwards maybe was himself overhyped by beating an Usman that maybe had lost something having been the champion for so long, and then you knock him out and you've got your confidence and he sort of comes in and it's weird. Like, I don't understand why Colby Covington wasn't able to do to Leon Edwards what Belal Muhammad did. I really don't get it. I like there's the whole okay, Colby broke his foot in the first round, and I know I feel like I'm going sort of all over the place with this one, but it's a weird one, right? It's like is Belal Muhammad just actually not very good, and he happened to beat Leon in this sort of weird moment where it was also like 5 a.m. Leon's time in the UK, and then he sent him on his like Tony Ferguson arc, and he beat guys like Wonderboy by smothering them, and he sort of edged his way through these fights, and he was able to just sort of make it, beat Sean Brady by KO, but like Sean Brady's chin now seems suspect maybe after Michael Morales. I know Michael Morales is huge and he does knock guys out, but like I feel like Belal Muhammad is this really weird unknown. Okay, it's very clear to everybody, right, that Belal Muhammad does not have the striking capability to beat Ian Machado Garry. Like, he's not just going to beat him in a striking matchup, right? Yes or yes? Great. So if he's not going to beat him in a striking matchup, then we have to assume he's going to out wrestle Ian Machado Garry for all 5 rounds, or at least 3 of the 5 rounds. He's just going to dominate him and hold him down when he wasn't able to do it to Jack Della Maddalena. And Shavkat wasn't able to finish Ian Garry, even though he's finished every other person that he's ever fought, a lot of it with wrestling and submissions. Belal's not submitting Ian Garry anytime soon. So how's he beating him? Canelo hands? Come on. How bad is Belal Muhammad? Seriously, like I don't. He could be really bad. He could be really bad and really lucky somehow. I know he says he works hard. He seems like the hardest worker in the room. Was it maybe that he just had like the worst game plan ever against JDM? But then, are you just bad at game planning? And if you're bad at game planning, Ian Machado Garry is good at game planning. That's why I picked him to beat Carlos Prates. Ian Garry's also locked in at his title fight. Like, the plot armor is still there for Ian Garry, Like, it just seems so clear. Ian's only loss is to Shavkat. Is it the age thing? That was something that I was wondering. Is it that Belal's age has caught up to him? He's 37 years old, and Ian Machado Garry is 28, right? And same with like Jack Della Maddalena, right? He's like, 29, 30, something like that. These guys are in their prime. Belal Muhammad, 37 years old. It's not like he's the biggest. He's not Yoel Romero, okay? He doesn't have like he's not a physical god. He's not Zeus, okay? So this guy looks like he probably doesn't age phenomenally, right? Like, did maybe age just catch up to him? He's just a little slower now. He's a little weaker now. Like, if so, Ian Machado Garry is probably putting him out, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if Belal Muhammad's trying to make a statement, especially with this being a 3-round fight. He's going to come in there, oh, this is only a 3-round fight. This isn't a 5-round fight. Wow, that changes things. Not by much, though. I think if anything, it actually makes what I'm about to say more accurate. So Belal Muhammad's going to come in super aggressive. He does not want to continue losing. He is going to get popped. It's just as simple as that. He's going to come. He's not going to be able to get the takedown super easily. Ian Machado Garry is always on his bike, moving backwards. Belal Muhammad is going to try and use that striking, come in, throw something. He's going to overextend, and Ian Garry's just going to pop him. Right hand, straight on the chin, puts Belal Muhammad down. follows up with a few more strikes because Ian Garry has no respect for Belal Muhammad's wrestling. It's done. Very similar to Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling, honestly. That's exactly how I see this going. Round 2, TKO. Ian Garry's winning this. Let's move on to Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menifield. Now, guys, I'm going with Alonzo Menifield here. Honestly, Volkan Oezdemir has been sort of up and down. He's had some decent moments in his career. But he's really lost every time it's gotten to the top. We can go over some of his record here. So he lost to Carlos Olberg, and I know that that's not really that bad of a loss, but beat Johnny Walker, beat Bogdan Guskov. Those guys aren't really that good. Bogdan Guskov's not bad. Lost to Nikita Krylov, beat Paul Craig. Again, not that impressive. Lost to Magomed Ankalaev, lost to Yuri Prohatska, beat Alexander Rakic, Ilia Latifi, lost to Dominic Reyes, lost to Anthony Smith, lost to DC. And these were 7 years ago now, right? In the last 7 years, he's won 5 fights and lost 7 fights, right? That's ridiculous. Alonzo Menifield, on the other hand, he's on a bit of a streak. He's won his last 2 fights. The fight against Umar Sy wasn't super interesting or exciting. Beat Julius Walker also by a split decision, which just doesn't bode great for him. Lost to Azamat Murzakanov, who is an undefeated beast. Lost to Carlos Olberg, who's basically an undefeated beast. And, before that was on a bit of a tear. Dustin Jacoby, Jimmy Crute, draw against Jimmy Crute beforehand. Askar Mazarov, Ed Herman back in the day. These are decent wins. He's got more momentum. He has the knockout power. They're big boys. I see Alonzo Menifield winning this probably by... I'm just going to go first round KO. I think there's going to be a star-making performance for Alonzo Menifield. Break himself into the rankings, get that top 10 spot, and move into Jack Hermansson versus Myktybek Orolbai. This is Jack Hermansson's welterweight debut. And I know that Jack Hermansson has not been doing so well for the last few years, but I could see him doing decently at welterweight. That fight against Gregory Rodriguez that he lost recently sort of shows that some of these middleweights now are getting so big. It's actually crazy how big and destructive they are. I'm 200 pounds right now, and these guys look gigantic compared to me. It's ridiculous. So, Jack Hermansson could maybe move down. He's got the grappling skills. Myktybek Orolbai is a big grappler. He hasn't fought anyone at Jack Hermansson's level, or maybe not necessarily that, but Jack Hermansson has fought a lot more elite level fighters than Myktybek Orolbai has, right? So, has a win against Tofik Musayev, lost to Mateusz Rebecki by split decision, beat Elvis Brenner, beat Uros Medic, which that's a decent win, beat Hayward Charles. That's sort of it, right? A bunch more wins on the regional scene. But if you look at Jack Hermansson, it's he lost to Gregory Rodriguez by that horrible left hook that left him out cold. But I don't think that's a problem, because I don't think Myktybek Orolbai's got the power to really damage Jack Hermansson so badly. He's going to be trying to wrestle, and that's also where I think the size of Jack Hermansson is really going to come in. Joe Pyfer, beat him by decision. That's pretty good. The fact he didn't get put out there was crazy. Lost to Roman Dolidze, beat Chris Curtis, lost to Sean Strickland, lost to Hamzat Chimaev in wrestling. But, he's trained with Hamzat. He's wrestled with Hamzat a lot, right? This is good for him in the idea of him wrestling with welterweights. He's felt Hamzat Chimaev when he was trying to fight all those welterweight guys. Beat Edmund Shabazian, which is a decent win. Lost to Marvin Vittori, beat Kelvin Gastelum, that's a good win. Lost to Jared Cannonier, beat Ronaldo Souza, Gerald Meerschaert, Talas Leites. Look at this career, man. And when you look at these losses, it's you're losing to Jared Cannonier in 2019. You're losing to Marvin Vittori in 2020, right? Sean Strickland in 2022. These are guys at their peaks. Roman Dolidze 2022. This is at each of these losses is really the best time in any of these guys' careers. So I'm going to go with Jack Hermansson. I'm going to go with decision for this. I think that he's going to do more damage on the feet. He's going to be able to avoid the takedowns and even maybe reverse some of the like sprawl, reverse, get top position, and do some damage of his own. I'm going to go with Jack Hermansson by decision, boys. Moving on to Serghei Spivac versus Shamil the Blob Gaziev. The Blob King versus Serghei Spivac. Guys, look at this photo of Serghei Spivac that Tapology has. This is like if Serghei Spivac and Draco Malfoy were put together in like an AI image generator. How many years ago do you think that this photo of Serghei Spivac was taken? Anyway, I have to go with Shamil Gaziev here, guys. Like, he only has one loss on his career, and it really just seems like Serghei Spivac is just, he's not who he once was. When he first lost to Tom Aspinall, he was on a 3-fight win streak, beat Alexei Oleinik, he'd lost to Marcin Tybura, but beat Taito Ivasa, lost to Walt Harris. Those aren't too bad losses. Then he loses to Tom Aspinall, wins his next few fights, beats Derek Lewis, loses to Cyril Gane, beats Marcin Tybura, gets that one back, loses to Jailton Almeida, loses to Waldo Cortez Acosta. Yeah, it's just too many losses. Shamil, the Blob, look at this guy. He's just the peak male performance, guys. He's beaten Thomas Peterson, beat Dontale Mays, lost to Jairzinho Rosenstrike by retirement in round 4, but I think that actually shows that like his chin's good, and it's just probably doesn't have the cardio to go a full 5-round fight yet. But 3 rounds against a guy in Serghei Spivac who's had his chin tested a few times now and lost. Jailton Almeida beat you with punches. Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall have taken you out. Like, your chin's been tested. Your chin's been checked, boy. At this point, I got to go with Shamil Gaziev on this one, guys. I'm going to go round 1 KO. Heavyweight bout. Big boys. Let's go. Moving on to Tagir Ulanbekov versus Azu Almabayev. Now, wait, no, that's not right. What? They've got Tagir Ulanbekov on the bottom of this main card, but I actually believe that it'll be Alex Perez versus Azu Almabayev. Well, we're going to do both. We'll do Tagir Ulanbekov in case that happens to open up the main card, and then we'll do the main event of the prelims in Alex Perez versus Azu Almabayev, okay? But Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi, I'm gonna go with Tagir here, man. Like, he's way more effective with his grappling. Kyoji Horiguchi, his takedown defense is not great. It's like 55%. I see this being a bit of a grappling fight, and I just see Tagir Ulanbekov being able to have dominant position consistently. Let's just take it. Yeah, we're going Tagir Ulanbekov by decision here. We're not going to overthink it. It's a flyweight fight with look at this freak head over here. I mean, I probably can't talk much, but like, what is this? Get this off my screen. Get this out of here. All right, moving on to Alex Perez versus Azu Almabayev. As opposed to that freaky thing before, look at how cute Azu Almabayev is. Little cutie face. He's so cute. Look at it. He's usually wearing a little hat, too. He has like a little blue hat, like the color of his flag. He's so cute. Versus Alex Perez, who honestly is like a super journeyman fighter at this point, guys. Like, lost to Tatsuro Taira, beat Mateus Nicolau, lost to Muhammad Makayev. I mean, don't get me wrong, those are 2 big losses, Tatsuro Taira and Muhammad Makayev. Lost to Alexandre Pantoja, lost to Davison Figueiredo. All huge losses. I mean, I'm probably being a bit of a dick here. Had a few wins before that, but then, like, look at all of these cancelled bouts. How many of those were injury on Alex Perez's side? What's going on there, right? Whereas you look at Azu Almabayev, beautiful record. He is a gamer, man. Like, he had 1 loss to Manel Cap recently, like earlier in the year, but Manel Cap is a beast. Beat Jose Ochoa. I thought Jose Ochoa had a good chance in that fight, but Azu Almabayev did a really good job. His wrestling is neat. He is fast. He puts that like Marab style pressure on. He's got good submission threats. Alex Perez has been submitted in half of his losses. Okay, so Azu Almabayev beat Mateus Nicolau, beat Jose Johnson, beat CJ Vergara, O'Day Osborne, Kenneth Meningat. Like, then it starts to get into the regional scene, but he's on a tear. His 2 losses were like early in his career against, funnily enough, Tagir Ulanbekov and some guy. But like, I don't see Alex Perez being able to handle the grappling here. I think this is going to be a very simple Almabayev either decision or submission. I'm actually going to predict a 3rd round submission for Almabayev here, rear naked choke. Anyway, that's the card. This is a fun card, guys. I think that, like I said, this is closer than you think. Dan Hooker's probably... I'm going with Dan Hooker. I think he's got a real chance to get this done. I think if someone forced me, like if someone put a gun to my head and said, you have to make a decision for your life, and if you're wrong, you're done, I'm probably going to go Arman Tsarukyan. But because this is a YouTube channel named Big Dumb Harry, I'm going with Dan Hooker by decision. I know it sounds crazy. And I know I got all my picks wrong last week, but you wait. After this event, when I come back here and I'm doing my victory dance saying Dan Hooker, 5-round decision, and if it's a split decision, oh, I'm going to feel so good. I'm going to feel so good about that split decision victory. Dan Hooker, let's go, baby.